So this is a Mega Boost. It is a 3D shooter that is on the PlayStation 1. The developers are the same developers that worked on the Gran Turismo series. It's the only non-racing game that they've ever worked on. Serves as a sort of like a tech demo to Gran Turismo 2. This game was developed sort of after the first game in that series. The in-game time is primarily what we use to organize runs, in which they're done deathless. So for RTA-wise, that would include deaths, but since we're doing this deathless, our in-game time is fairly reflective to the RTA, minus the intermission cutscenes that we'll have that are very brief. RTA times wise for the submission, a good time is generally under 45 minutes RTA, which in-game anything under 30 is considered decent. Our goal, and my personal goal, is to always have my runs land at somewhere between 26 to 28 or under that. But it can be fairly difficult to do so because mistakes do matter and they do carry over between levels. The opening cutscene is the only real initial explanation we get to what we're going to be doing and what's going on with the story. And that is all kind of factored in with the estimate. Game controls, much like how you would expect a game of this type to control. So we're using the analog sticks to move around and to aim. And we have a shoot button that will also be used to do lock-ons as well. And we will be able to use the game's mechanics such as boosting and the Viper drive to deal with other situations and general movement. So it's mostly a boss rush. It's get through the stage, kill as many enemies as quickly as we can, and then kill the bosses. So we'll be getting through all of the zones, and then towards the last few stages or zones, there'll be basically a boss gauntlet. It's some of the most difficult sections of the run, just because you do have to do it and hopefully retain as much of your health between stages as possible. Because if we do take too much damage, it does not fully recover.
The first artificial intelligence. The enemy has already activated the time shaft. Your mission is to prevent the Alpha Core from causing historical alteration.
So the other thing is that there is limited lives with playing the game in campaign mode. If we die all of the lives, then it's complete game over, and whatever health and energy we had going into that stage will be exactly what we start with once we use a life to continue. So as I said before, if we do make mistakes, it's carried over throughout the game. So we want to try to avoid taking as much damage as possible, keeping ourselves nice and healthy, and only using our Viper booster energy when necessary. so that we're loaded. And making sure that we're on normal. Controls are set up correctly. And we'll be doing campaign mode. So, as I said, between missions will be sort of like these intermission screens. There's sort of like miniaturized cutscenes that kind of just explain the generals of the mission and what's we're about to do. So that is the boss that we'll be getting to. And there's a bit of a quick kill strat. Very easy quick kill and cheese strat for that boss. But our goal is to get to the time shaft, jump back in time to stop the AI from taking over and wiping out humanity.
It's all set. Carry out the mission carefully. Caution. Caution.
I almost didn't have the analog selected on the controller. Alright, so we're at the first mini-boss of the stage. Some stages will have them, some stages won't. So for this particular mini-boss, we want to get in close, wait for his hatch to open, and shoot missiles into it, and avoid hitting the asteroid as much as possible. So we can double tap the 2 fire buttons to quickly deal damage as well, but mainly we're waiting for him to open the hatch. Alright, and so that's the mini-boss down. So you can notice I'm hovering in place, and that's because I'm using the left and right bumpers. One allows me to do target locking, and the other one allows me to hold movement in place. Binding them together allows me to strafe. Super useful. So for this boss in particular, we want to get just about the right distance from him, lock ourselves in position, and just shoot at the center here without engaging the actual boss by going too far forward. If we do that, it'll activate the boss's AI, and they'll do tons of damage to us, which is not super good. So this is just a really easy way to kill the boss safely without preserving all of our health for the next stage.
Zone has been completed. Boost level is now upgraded.
So we leveled up there based on our performance. We'll now have slightly more health. If we had taken damage, it would recover a little bit of it. We also unlocked more missile slots for target locking.
Omega boost. It's all set. Carry out the mission carefully.
So the levels start varying a little bit with the enemies. As we go forward, we'll see enemy types, different approaches to them. But if you've played the games like Star Fox, this kind of reminds me a bit of that, in a sense. But it's a bit different in that regard. So painting targets allows us to do those lock-ons. So we'll destroy all these enemies here so that they don't fly around and start shooting us. There'll be 3 more that spawn.
Caution. Caution. Caution.
Yeah, mini boss spawning in a moment.
Be careful.
Alright, so for this mini boss here, it's pretty simple. We'll just fly around, destroy the different parts of the space station here. It does unload other extra enemies and has turrets. We do have to be a little bit careful of that. Try to get some target locks when possible. There, mini boss down. The only threat of the space station mini boss there is the actual enemies it shoots out at you.
Warning.
Alright, so
Approaching.
this boss, it will be a reoccurring boss that we'll see a bit later. First time we encounter him, it's just a bit of a showdown. Isn't anything too crazy. We want to actually kill this boss, he'll actually get away. But it's an introduction to another mecha similar to us that's AI controlled, that's called Beta. Beta or Alpha, I forget the name of this particular mech, but he's a recurring enemy. The later fight with him towards the end of the game is significantly more difficult, because he'll have much different AI patterns and attacks. For now, it's a pretty easy fight. Gonna show up behind me. Get out of the way there. Hit us. We try to get as close as we can with our targets there so we can start peppering them. We don't take too much damage from physical contact on normal, so we don't have to worry too much about that. From other enemies, we probably don't want to be doing that because they do deal more damage, but this early on, it's not too bad. And we'll recover almost all of our health. That boss is down. Another thing that we'll see a bit later is bosses will have basically desperation attacks, where they will try to take you out just before they're either dead or as they're dying. There is a very particular boss that could very well kill me in one hit on hard mode. On normal, I'd have to be pretty low on health, but it can still take a big chunk of my HP away, which would be putting me in a pretty rough spot for the later stage after it. So keeping that stuff in mind, we want to try to stay as healthy as we can between stages, because like I said, I took a little bit of damage there, but it's not a big deal because we'll have recovered full health for this next stage.
Omega boost. It's all set. Carry out the mission carefully.
So this stage has some of the most annoying enemies, which are the guts here that do sort of like a run by. They could eat you very quickly on hard if you're not paying attention and avoiding the hits. They do come out pretty quickly, so again, like a lot of these stages, when you're killing enemies pretty fast, they don't really seem like very long missions or stages. We have robots here coming up from the ground. The boss on this stage is a little interesting because it is a bit of a scary boss, but it's not a hard boss to kill. So those guys always tend to get away very fast, but that's fine. Waiting for this wave of enemies to spawn here. Again, we're trying to kill as many as we can as well, because we do want to increase our score level so that we're stronger for the later stages. So this guy shoots drunken missiles at us, so we want to get close as we can to him, but not too close that we take all of the shots to our face. That would be bad. On hard, taking a hit from this guy could be very dangerous. And taking a hit also kind of hinders our control or movement briefly. So try to avoid that as much as we can. So now we'll be fighting the actual boss of the stage, which is a stealth bomber.
Warning, undefined enemy is approaching.
And this boss can be a bit intimidating, because it does have a lot of weapons on it. You do want to stay mostly underneath the stealth bomber and avoid taking hits from the bombs that it's dropping, but you do not want to be out in the open away from it, because it does have an attack that will always hit you if you're not under it. So you do want to be careful about that. We're dismantling the different components of the plane here, and doing so does increase damage to the overall health bar. So this is the attack we want to stay underneath him for, so we'll hold steady underneath him, do some target locks, get rid of some of these missile pods. Try to take out the other engines and stuff. There we go. So boss is down. All good. Watch it fall onto the ground and explode, and then after that it'll be mission over.
Zone has been completed. Boost levels now upgraded. Entering the next zone. Omega Boost. It's all set. Carry out the mission cancel.
Alright, so in this stage, there's a bit of a tough boss towards the end of the stage here. A couple mini bosses we have to deal with. But for the first part of the stage, we just are going to be shooting up at some enemies that'll drop on top of us. And then there's going to be some enemies popping out of the ground that we want to activate as quickly as we can. And they do come in waves as well, but the quicker we activate them, the faster they pop out of the ground. So, one of the things that can happen in this game when you're first playing it, or getting used to it, is getting vertigo. Because, like, the camera can go upside down a lot of times, you don't know which direction you're facing. So, just getting used to that sense of direction is difficult sometimes. Missed killing that guy, that's fine. Alright, so this mini-boss, our goal is just going to be circling him to not get grabbed by the attack that he's shooting out, which will bring us in and do continual damage. So the safest thing to do is circle him, target lock, and blow it up that way. And then we have another mini-boss here, which we'll see a different version of it later. But it's a giant snake, alien snake thing. Fairly easy and straightforward enemy here. The other version of it is significantly more dangerous. Although still a fairly easy boss fight in general. So killed it in relatively few cycles. Good, and then we have the final boss coming up, which is actually more difficult to avoid attacks or damage from. Ideally, we want to kill it before it decides to run away. It'll start moving around the arena, making it harder to track down and kill. So that's essentially what our goal is. We're going to try to position ourselves behind it, get free damage, and then hopefully avoid some of the attacks it's going to do. Target locking is a fast form of damage on it. We're going to try to avoid the attack that it's doing. There's a particular attack where it shoots lasers in a horizontal fashion at me, which are pretty difficult to avoid most time. So we're hoping that we can do that. And this is another attack that can hurt to dodge. So we have a boost mechanic to give us a bit of movement and momentum. We want to stay away from the front so that we don't get hit by the gun. But this is the attack that I was talking about. It's one of the scariest attacks on this enemy. Especially on hard mode. And I'm gonna go ahead and activate Viper Boost here. And that's going to allow me to quickly kill the boss, saving some of my energy so that we don't have to chase him around.
Zone has been completed. Boost level now updated.
Overall, not the super cleanest performance on this stage, but it was a pretty well done stage. We did kill everything. We got an S rank, which is the highest rank you get. And now we're going to do our first of Time Shaft missions, which has a very interesting, somewhat RNG boss towards the end of it. This is basically entirely an auto-scroller, but there is ways to speed it up, which is obviously enemies and along the way.
Carry out the mission
Um,
carefully.
And especially the mini-boss as well. Like, a lot of time to deal with. So we're going to be navigating some obstacles as well, so it's a bit different than the other missions. And this level also speeds up a bit as we progress further through. So this will be our first mini-boss here. The only mini-boss. This mini-boss is a bit interesting. We want to avoid the laser that is shooting out at the first part of the phase, and then the second part we want to avoid the center beam here. Alright, while still trying to deal damage. And this part gets faster and faster the longer it takes, so we want to do this as quickly as we can. On hard mode, it's very, very quick. So now we want to avoid some lasers here. And we just got the small dodging section to do, and then we'll get the boss.
Warning, undefined enemies approaching.
Alright, so this is what I like to call crab boss. Or spider boss, I guess. Whatever you prefer to call it. He shoots a bunch of random lasers all over the place and bombs and all sorts of stuff. He will start from behind us, move in front of us, and has different parts to his attacks, phases. He does fire a big laser, which is very deadly if it makes contact with me. It can take a lot of my health. It's basically an insta-kill on hard mode. So this is one of the more challenging bosses that you'll first encounter. And it is a bit more unpredictable compared to the other bosses. As I said, I just made contact with him by accident because he's coming towards me. Alright, so he's charging up the laser, and again, I don't want that to hit me, because it does a lot of damage. So, it's a little bit unpredictable where he'll fire it, because it's based on him moving around when I hit him. So I just want to hug the sides as much as possible. and stay away from the laser. Alright, boss is dead. I took a little bit of damage towards the end there, but that's okay. Still recover all our health back. And this will be our first time shaft jump. Which, you know, we'd honestly want it to be bringing us back in time so we could stop this whole problem that started. But, you know, it's not going to do that, obviously. So instead, it's going to jump us back only a little bit, and we'll have to find another time shaft again. It'll warp us back to a different point in time.
Transporting completed. Updating all systems. System alert. Analyzing Rhino interface. Detecting high energy potentials. Target match 98% of planet Eta. High energy Alpha Core, and now approaching.
So now our goal is to get on top of this planet to get to the time shaft, and this is where things start getting a lot more difficult moving.
Omega boost. Ready to attack. Carry out the mission carefully.
So after we get onto the surface of the planet, that's when the game's going to start really showing its true colors. For now, we just got to get to the planet.
Caution. Caution.
So we gotta take out these mech waves, and then there'll be an armada fleet that'll be spawning shortly after this, which is where our mini-boss, which is very dangerous. It's a very scary mini-boss with a desperation attack that I mentioned earlier. So we have to take out this armada fleet protecting it before we can actually hurt the mini-boss. This part can be a little scary because there's a lot of ships here shooting at us. And this is on a bit of a timer as well, so eventually the ship will activate on its own. So it's charging up its laser. If we didn't kill all the ships, we wouldn't be able to damage it. So now what we're going to do is damage it a little bit and then activate our Viper Boost. And that'll help us kill off the ship really quickly without taking too much damage from it. There we go. And it's going to activate its separation attack, which means it's going to teleport right behind us. And as soon as it does that, we're going to move it out of the way so that we don't get hit by the laser it just fired, so... Good. It does the teleport jump and firing significantly faster on a hard mode, so... Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like hard mode has some differences with a lot of things. Not only does the speed of things get affected, but the patterns of the AI also do as well. So this boss is pretty straightforward. It's a refight of the Stink boss that we fought on the other planet, except for he's all metallic-like. And he shoots lasers at us this time. And we want to keep the segments of the body separated from the head as much as possible, because that makes the boss a little bit easier to deal with. We can't actually damage the head of the boss until we kill all the segments, so that is the one gimmick to the fight. Alright, so now that we killed all the segments, we can get in a little closer and then just spam down with rapid fire. Kill the head and the boss is dead. As you see, we took a bit of damage there on this stage. Some of that HP will recover. I'm not too worried about that. It'll be, depending on how the next level's boss fight goes, whether or not we should be a little bit more concerned or not. But for the most part, we're okay. And in the meantime, over the next few levels, we'll be recharging our Viper Boost Drive, which is that top bar above our health bar, which is fun. So the green bar is our health, and the bar above it is the Viper Boost bar, and when it's accessible, it will be solid blue. Or somewhat solid blue. Right now it's red because it's recharging. And we want as full of a bar as possible when going into the final sections for this last stage of boss fights. So in this stage, we'll have some waves attacking us. Trying to destroy as many of those enemies before they touch the ground as possible. There'll be a wave of fighters coming in on this part as well, which could very well do a lot of damage to him. And there's several mini-bosses on this level as well. Alright, so for this mini-boss, we're gonna make it do donuts the entire time to avoid its missiles. And he's gonna turn into two other mini-bosses, which are fairly easy to kill. Don't want to get hit by the laser. And then we'll have the actual boss here, which is the refight with the second stage boss that got away. This time we'll actually destroy him. But he has some new attacks. We're gonna stay right here. Keep getting lock-ons while we're at a fairly safe distance. And then he's gonna start another part of his phase where he's gonna shoot these homing attacks, which are very hard to dodge. And they do a lot of damage as well, so... Try to stay close to the ground so they're not in the air for too long. This is the fight that I'm always scared of in hard mode for sure, because I will possibly die to this boss specifically. and not just like one of the phases of the last boss. But on normal, it's fairly easy. Now he's gonna activate his Viper Boost, which is his Desperation attack, and it's gonna chase us. Doesn't really do a whole lot of damage to us on normal. We just want to stay close to the ground, so the falling animation for him is shorter. And then after a short bit, he'll give up and then fall to his death. But yeah, staying as close to the ground as possible means that he falls for less at the very end.
Zone has been completed. Boost level is now upgraded. Entering the next zone.
Yeah, the hardest thing with getting used to playing this game is getting to the capacity where you can play and perform well enough that you can run Deathless, because that is not as easy as some people might think when they're first picking up and playing this game. Because getting used to how to fight the bosses and patterns and what to expect from the bosses, something that takes some time. Not very difficult, but it could take some time to master and get really good at. So for this boss, we're trying to kill it really quickly in the cycles. Generally, you can one-cycle this boss on normal. It's very difficult to do so, but you can generally kill this boss in 2 or 3 cycles. And to kill it, we just have to hit this gem on the back while avoiding much of the damage output from this boss. The boss is also done in 2 parts. The second part is pretty straightforward and easy. It's this first part that's a bit more annoying. So that was a 3 cycle. It isn't the greatest, but it's not that bad. So the next part of the level is, like, this whole fight is technically timed. So we have a set duration to complete both parts of this fight. Second part is just a giant space banana that will do some target locks on. He doesn't really attack back at all on normal. It's the hard mode that we have to worry about, because she shoots little bananas on hard mode that deal contact and explosive damage that can hurt a lot. So it's just missile them down and the level's over.
Boost level is now upgraded.
And then after that, it'll initiate the last stage or zone, which is a three-part boss fight. And this is probably, in most people's experience when playing this game casually, the hardest point in the game if they've gotten up to it, if they don't know what to expect, because you have to do this entire part against these 3 parts of the boss without dying, or you have to restart the whole thing. And this is with the exact amount of health that I ended the last zone or stage in. So coming here with very little health is rough, because then you have to do this entire level without that much health. So there's not much room for error if you're coming here with very little health to spare. So the first phase here, we're just going to stay in the center, shoot it a bunch for some free damage, and that's going to spawn some orbs out that we need to kill some of them. The reason for that is it will reflect shots, and we're gonna just kind of float around it and use regular shots and not homing, so that we can deal free damage while it's on the first cycle. And if you kill all the orbs, it'll just start a new cycle and get progressively more difficult. So on the second phase here, it's going to come back at us as a giant, I don't know what to call this, centipede. And it's going to do a drive-by on us, and has a lot of guns on it. And we're going to activate Viper Boost so that we can kill some of these segments really quickly. Speed up this portion of the boss fight. And now it's just a matter of killing the last few segments and fighting the head of the boss where the weak point is. Alright, so this part can be a little scary. So we want to just dodge these attacks. Generally, he has a third or fourth attack, but you generally don't see it. It's commonly just these two. And then obviously pausing for a moment to spin. So there we go, phase 2 down. Phase 3 isn't that difficult. It can be in some portions of it, but it's a fairly straightforward fight. So this would be a photosensitivity warning going into this part of the boss fight, because it does get a little trippy, because we are in a, like, sort of an alternate space-time vacuum, and visuals can be a little hard to register for some people. So for this boss fight, our lock-ons take longer to get, and the boss can deal a lot of damage really quickly if we let it. Fairly easy to avoid most of the attacks. It does have a Desperation attack and a Viper Boost attack that it do later. It'll do that once it's nearing death. But for the most part, we're just chasing around, trying to deal as much damage as we can. This homing attack that it's doing, we want to avoid it. One of the only dangerous attacks that we do want to try harder to avoid. And we're kind of waiting for our Viper Boost to recharge during this fight. Alright, so it teleported. It's gonna do its Desperation attack, which is a laser. We're almost done here. We'll activate our Viper Boost to avoid its attack, put ourselves in position to try to finish up the boss fight here. And that should be the boss. There we go. Let's GG. Boss is dead. And the Alpha Core will merge with us. And then we'll be able to activate the time shaft here to travel back to the earlier point in time when they first built the artificial intelligence, or the ENIAC as they call it. Which is followed by a pretty lengthy cutscene and credits section. So yeah, overall, that's a brief look at the entirety of the run for Omega Boost. Like I said, a lot of the game is just reacting to things, because again, it's all based on like what the player does that the game and the enemies will respond to, for the most part, with the exception of some bosses with their patterns and RNG. But so yeah, so we got a cutscene. We've obviously, we're traveling back in time, so we're back in an earlier period of time, and we'll drop out of the sky and fly over to where the ENIAC is being held, a university. And then from this point on, like, it's the end of the story. There's not too much else going on after that. It's just we've altered the course of history and have prevented artificial intelligence from gaining sentiency and then taking over and wiping out mankind. So that's the whole summary of the story. Got a good glimpse of the general gameplay. Hopefully the explanation for things was adequate enough. Again, I could go more into detail on very specific things. It's a lot to kind of explain while trying to focus on the run. But it's an entertaining one to watch. I enjoy playing this game. It's a very short run compared to what I'm normally used to doing, which are significantly longer runs. But it's a lot of fun. But anyways, this has been MASH. I hope you all enjoyed the submission for Omega Boost, which is a pretty amazing PS1 game that's sort of like a hidden gem that most people don't even know about or don't even remember. But it is a game from the same developers as Gran Turismo. It's the only one that they made that wasn't a racing game. And yeah, it's super cool. I enjoy it a lot, and I encourage everybody to give it a shot and test it out. It plays very much like an arcade-style game. It's just straightforward to get into and simple. It plays very well and fluid, and I enjoy the game a lot. We're going to skip the outro credits there because there is some music there that goes on for a while, but as you can see, my gameplay time isn't where I was hoping it to be, but it is under the RTA that I was hoping for, so... With that being said, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all another time. Thank you for your time. Quick thing to note too is if you do a Deathless run, that it will show a CLR on the ranking screen at the very end that shows that it was a Deathless clear. If you died, it will show the stage at which you died or quit out on.